I slapped my husband after catching him in the arms of his mistress, and in return, he had security drag me away and committed me to a psychiatric facility. 2 days later, when he regretfully came to pick me up, he collapsed upon hearing the receptionist say, "She's already gone. A fleet of supercars came for her yesterday." The 5-year anniversary of Hunter and me was held at a luxurious 5-star hotel in downtown Seattle. On the stage, massive LED screens looped images of Hunter's booming tech company. Below sat nearly 500 guests, investors, tech, journalists, relatives from both sides, and even those who had watched me stay up countless nights helping him edit every single pitch deck back when his company didn't even have a proper office. I was wearing a custom-made ivory gown, a delicate necklace resting on my tatus, collarbone, and my wedding ring still on my finger. I had thought that even though our marriage had grown cold, he would at least give me some dignity in front of all these people. Women often suffer because of that exact mindset, knowing the foundation of the house is cracked but still trying to keep the roof intact, believing that 5 years of history can't just be thrown away. Walking past a row of tables adorned with white floral centerpieces, I spotted Hunter near a secondary stage area. He stood under the dim lighting, his tailored suit immaculate, his face projecting that same calm demeanor he always had on CNBC when discussing business ethics. But his arm was wrapped tightly around Mia's waist. She was the new PR assistant who had joined the company less tech and tease in the PR than a year ago. Mia leaned into his chest so naturally, as if that spot had belonged to her for a long time, and I was just a stranger who had stumbled into the wrong room. Draped over her shoulder was the silk scarf I had left in Hunter's office. On her wrist was the designer bracelet he told me he bought last month for a female corporate partner because they needed to maintain good relations. In that moment, the music, the clinking of champagne flutes, the chatter, it all faded away. The only sound left was the deafening, erratic pounding of my own heart. I don't know how I walked up to them. Perhaps it was the last shred of self-respect from a wife who had been disregarded for too long. Mia jumped when she saw me. Her hand, which had been resting on Hunter's chest, retracted quickly, but Hunter didn't let go of her waist. He just looked at me, a flicker of annoyance in his eyes, as if I weren't his wife, but rather an inconvenient glitch in the evening's programming. I asked very quietly, "Hunter, explain this." Just 3 words, but my throat felt like it was lined with broken glass. He paused for a beat, then said in a low, even voice, "Lily, don't make a scene. Tonight is important for the company." Important for the company? The words made me laugh, but hot tears welled up. First, for the past 5 years, when was the company not more important than me? When my mother was hospitalized, he was in a board meeting. When I was delirious, with a fever, he had to fly to San Francisco to meet venture capitalists. When I found those midnight texts between him and Mia, he said I was being paranoid. Living together without trust is exhausting, he had said. I had swallowed my pride so many times, so much that I disgusted myself. But you endure it because you still love them, not because it doesn't hurt. I raised my hand and slapped him. The sound echoed through the brilliantly lit ballroom. It wasn't overwhelmingly, end quote, loud, but it was enough to silence the immediate crowd. Hunter's head jerked to the side, a tiny drop of blood appearing at the corner of his mouth. Mia covered, her mouth, tears instantly spilling over. "Hunter!" she cried out, a soft, dependent sound, as if she were the one who had just been deeply wronged. Camera flashes from the press started going off frantically, the blinding white lights hitting my face. I heard someone behind me whisper, "Is that Hunter's wife? Why is she so unhinged?" The stares of strangers hurt more than curses, because they knew nothing but were so ready to believe the beautiful, theatrical performance right in front of them. Hunter slowly wiped the corner of his mouth. The first thing he did wasn't to look at me, but to pull Mia into his arms. He took off his suit jacket, draped it over her shoulders, and said softly, "Don't be afraid, I'm right here." Those were the exact words he had said to me years ago, on a night the company almost went bankrupt, and I sat crying over a laptop, terrified he would collapse from the stress. He had put his hand on my head and said, "Lily, I'm right here." It turns out the same words, when spoken to a different person, changed their meaning entirely. I stood before them, the hand I used to slap him still numb, but the real agony was realizing that this man no longer saw me as someone who needed protection. I looked straight at him, struggling to keep my voice from breaking. You hold another woman in front of your wife and tell me not to make a scene? Hunter, you. I know better than anyone how much blood and sweat I've poured into this company. Are you planning to use the media to turn me into a joke tonight? His face stiffened slightly at the mention of my contributions. Mia pressed closer to him, her lips trembling as if terrified I would attack her. Hunter looked around, seeing the guests crowding in and the cameras pointing our way. He sighed, softening his voice so much that anyone listening would think he was a remarkably patient man dealing with an abusive wife. I apologize, everyone, he announced. My wife has been under a lot of psychological stress lately. Her emotions are unstable. I've urged her to seek treatment, but she refuses. I am entirely at fault for not taking better care of her. I froze. With just a few sentences, he had turned the justified anger of a betrayed wife into undeniable proof of mental illness. I looked at the faces around me. Some pitied me. Some were morbidly curious. Others were hurriedly recording on their iPhones. Sometimes in life, you aren't knocked down by a punch, but by the labels someone else slaps onto your forehead. I took a step forward, wanting to grab the microphone from the stage and scream the truth, but two men in black suits appeared on either side of me out of nowhere. One blocked my path, the other grabbed my wrist. Let go of me, I struggled, my voice rising. Hunter, how dare you do this to me? Hunter didn't answer immediately. He just patted Mia's shoulder to comfort her, then signaled the security guards. Take her out through the service elevator. Don't let the press agitate her any further. His words sounded so considerate, but the grip of the security guard on my wrist was brutal. I was dragged backward, my heel catching on the carpet, almost making me fall. My clutch dropped to the floor, my lipstick, tissues, and a blanks small USB drive containing the pitch deck for our new project scattered across the marble floor. I bent down to pick it up, but the guard yanked me forward. The rapid-fire clicks of cameras chased me. The whispers stuck to my skin like tiny needles. I tried to turn my head for one last look at Hunter. He was still standing under the crystal chandelier, one arm around Mia, the other adjusting his collar. The wedding band on his ring finger caught the light. The saddest part was that the brightest thing that night wasn't our marriage, but the cold metallic gleam of Duminode, an object that had lost all its meaning. When I was pushed through the service doors, the draft from the employee corridor chilled my spine. The smell of industrial floor cleaner, leftover food, from the kitchen, and the clattering of utility carts instantly turned the prices. Glamour outside into a cruel joke. A wife who walked through the front doors was ultimately dragged out through the trash and service exit. Out in the loading dock behind the hotel, a black SUV was already waiting. Standing by the open door was a man wearing a white lab coat over a dress shirt. A name badge from a behavioral health center clipped to his pocket. That was when true terror set in. I violently twisted around, but the guards pinned my arms. Hunter walked toward us slowly. The red mark from my slap was still on his cheek, yet his eyes were chillingly serene. My voice was hoarse. You had the car and the personnel waiting all along? He looked at me, neither denying nor explaining. Some silences are crueler than confessions because they prove everything was calculated. They were just waiting for you to step into the trap. I thrashed again, but how could a woman shaking with pain and humiliation overpower two large men? The car door opened, and the smell of leather and hospital-grade antiseptic made me nauseous. Hunter stepped close, placing a hand on my shoulder as if comforting me. To outsiders, he was still the patient, caring husband. Only I could hear his voice when he leaned in close to my ear, his words dropping like ice into my bones. Be a good girl. Go in there for a couple of days and you'll figure out who actually calls the shots in your life. I woke up in a room so blindingly white it hurt my eyes. It wasn't the sterile white of a modern hospital, but a flat, cold white, as if they had intentionally erased any trace of humanity. The ceiling was low, a dome camera was mounted at the corner, and the window was covered with frosted film and reinforced with thick white bars on the outside. I sat up, my head throbbing as if someone were crushing my temples. My left wrist was bruised in a purple ring from struggling at the hotel. I was no longer wearing my ivory dress. Instead, I was in loose, light blue scrubs with Serenity Pines Wellness Center printed on the chest. I reached up my necklace. Was still there, but my clutch and phone were gone. I was wearing oversized, grippy socks that rubbed my heels raw. Out in the hallway, the sound of a medical cart rolling over tiles echoed monotonously. Every few minutes, an electronic keycard beeped. That sound quickly taught you one thing: here, where you go, what you say, and who you call are no longer up to you. I stood up, walked to the heavy door, and pounded on it. Open the door! I don't consent to being here. I want to speak to my attorney. As I yelled that last sentence, I felt the bitter irony in my throat. Brought in, during the dead of night, no phone, no ID, no witnesses. Asking for an attorney sounded as absurd as asking for it to rain gold. The door opened 10 minutes later. A male doctor in his 40s walked in neatly. Parted hair, thin-rimmed glasses, a perfectly ironed white coat. His badge read, Dr. Mitchell, lead psychiatrist. Behind him stood a young nurse holding a blue clipboard. Dr. Mitchell sat on the chair opposite the bed, his voice excessively soothing. Lily, please try to calm down. We are here to help you stabilize. I looked him dead in the eye. I don't need to stabilize. I was brought here, against my will, by my husband. This is unlawful detainment. I demand to make a phone call. He didn't look surprised. He simply opened the folder, flipped a page, and tapped his pen on a document with a red stamp. Hunter is your legal spouse. According to the incident report, last night you exhibited agitated behavior, physically assaulted someone in public, and showed signs of being a danger to yourself and others. Your family requested an involuntary 72-hour psychiatric hold for observation. The word family made me want to laugh. What family? The man who held his mistress while his security dragged his wife away, only to sign my rights away. The next second, I snatched the file. Printed standard text glared back at me. Acute. Psychological crisis. Paranoia and delusions of betrayal. Loss of emotional control. Below the sponsor section was Hunter's signature, alongside a seemingly rational statement. Wife exhibits irrational jealousy. Frequently suspects female staff. History of manic outbursts at home. My hands shook as I read it. It turns out people don't need to beat you bloody to be cruel. Sometimes, all it takes is writing a few lines on a piece of paper and stamping it to turn a sane person into someone whose every word is doubted. I slammed the file onto the table, fighting to keep my voice steady. Dr. Mitchell, look at me. Am I speaking incoherently? Am I harming myself? I slapped my husband because he was having an affair right in front of me. If a betrayed woman feeling pain, anger, and demanding answers is considered a disease, then how many sane people are left in this world? The young nurse looked down, her knuckles white as she gripped her notepad. But Dr. Mitchell merely let out a soft sigh. The harder you deny it, Lily, the more it proves your current emotional state is unstable. We aren't jumping to conclusions. We are merely observing you. Temporarily. I stared at him, suddenly realizing this conversation wasn't meant for him to hear my side of the story. It was just a procedural requirement to prove they had consulted with the patient. When someone has already decided to silence you with a medical label, even your sanity will be documented as defiance. The nurse then asked me to hand over any remaining personal items. I told her my phone and purse had been stolen by Hunter's men. She avoided my gaze and held out a plastic tray. Please remove your ring, necklace, hairpins, anything that could pose a danger. The center will seal and store them. I looked down and remembered my wedding ring was still on my ring finger. Last night, I had clenched my fist so tightly I hadn't realized it was still there. It wasn't an expensive ring. Hunter had bought it years ago when he was just launching his startup, scraping pennies together. When he slipped it onto my finger, he promised he would buy me a better one someday. I used to think the most precious thing wasn't the ring, but the promise. Now I knew that some promises only survive as long as you are useful to them. I didn't want to take it off, but the nurse repeated the protocol. Dr. Mitchell sat silently observing, as if my reaction was just another symptom to log. I bit my lip and twisted the ring off. Because I had lost weight over the last few months, it slipped off easily, leaving a pale indentation on my skin. I dropped it into the plastic tray. The metallic clink sounded small, but it twisted my heart. Some things don't feel heavy when you wear them. You only realize how much weight they carried when you take them off. The nurse led me out for some basic vitals. The hallway was long and freezing. lined with doors featuring tiny glass observation windows. Some people stood inside, staring out with empty eyes. Others muttered to themselves on the floor. And then there were people like me, painfully sane, but with no way to prove it. I asked the nurse her name. She hesitated before whispering, "Harper." I seized the opening, lowering my voice. "Nurse Harper, please, just one phone call. I just need to call my parents or an attorney." Harper glanced at the hallway cameras, her lips pressed tight. "I don't have the Bersadian to the Perdians. Authorization. Lily, your file is flagged for restricted communication for the first 48 hours. Hunter, your family requested no outside stimulation. Your family." The way they rebranded cruelty into clinical care was sickeningly ironic. I was sent back to my room near dawn. In the pocket of the scrubs was a daily schedule, meal times, medication times, evaluation times. Everything was meticulously planned. The only thing missing was my free will. I sat on the edge of the bed, staring at the camera in the ceiling. I reminded myself, do not break anything, do not scream, do not give them a single excuse to write anything negative in that file. When you are pushed into the mud, the first step to standing back up is controlling your breathing. Because if you panic even a little, they will claim you were dirty to begin with. At noon, a nurse brought in a plastic tray, bland soup, boiled vegetables, and cold chicken. I had no appetite but forced myself to swallow every bite. If I skipped a meal, my file would get a new entry. Refusal to eat. After eating, I asked for a pen and paper to document the events. Harper hesitated but said she would ask her supervisor. Not long after, the PA system in the hallway broadcast the internal news channel. I caught Hunter's name, the company's name, and then the sickeningly sweet voice of an anchorwoman. Despite a personal incident at last night's gala, Tech CEO Hunter Davies confirmed that the seed funding for SmartHaven, a digital management platform for modern families, is moving forward as planned. I shot up from the bed. SmartHaven, that name was mine. I came up with it during a power outage in our old cramped apartment when Hunter was eating mac and cheese next to me, dreaming of a product that could help normal families manage finances, healthcare, and education in one app. I wrote the first pitch deck. I edited the slides. I fought with the engineering team to keep the features for expectant mothers and family caregivers. Yet, on the broadcast, the person standing next to Hunter cutting the ribbon wasn't me, it was Mia. She was wearing a tailored white pantsuit, smiling gently, her hand resting over my husband's, acting as if she had been the one to endure the hardest days with him. I rushed to the small glass window in the door, trying to get a better view of the TV in the common area. On screen, Hunter leaned in to adjust Mia's microphone, a tender expression on his face that I hadn't seen in years. A reporter asked about his wife's absence. He sighed, his eyes looking red. "I just hope she gets the treatment she needs. No matter what, I will take full responsibility." Those two words, "take responsibility," made my stomach churn. A man who locks you in a room, takes your phone, your ID, and your right to defend yourself, stands in front of cameras claiming he is taking responsibility. The most terrifying thing in the world isn't a villain showing their true face. It's a villain speaking with the voice of a saint. I returned to the bed, scouring my memory for anything I could still control. My corporate email password, copies of our equity agreements, presentation files. I had sent from my personal MacBook the names of angel investors who knew I spearheaded the project. I needed to get out of here, or at least leave a digital paper trail proving my sanity. But when I asked to log into my email at the nurse's station, they shook their heads. By late afternoon, Harper sneaked me a whisper while handing me water. "Lily, your corporate accounts were deactivated. I saw on Twitter that Hunter just announced an executive restructuring." I looked at her, the plastic cup turning cold in my hands. He wasn't just locking me up, he was erasing me from my own life's work. I used the excuse of needing the restroom to escape the camera's view. I sat on the closed toilet lid for a long time. Water dripped from the sink faucet like a Terran countdown clock. I asked myself how many red flags I had ignored over the last 5 years. When Hunter told me not to attend technical meetings because VCs don't take female co-founders seriously. When he transferred the intellectual property to the corporate entity, claiming it was just a legal formality. When Mia called him at midnight and he stepped out onto the balcony whispering, "This trap wasn't built in a single night. It was woven thread by thread using my trust and his calculation." When I stepped back into the room, Dr. Mitchell was waiting with a new stack of papers. He placed a pen in front of me, his tone as smooth as ever. "Lily, this is a consent form stating you are voluntarily cooperating with the 7-2-hour observation. Please sign it so we can update your chart." I stared at the word voluntarily and choked. Their version of voluntary meant being dragged here, stripped of my belongings, locked behind a heavy door, and then handed a pen to legalize the kidnapping. I pushed the paper back. "I won't sign. If you want to document something, write that I demanded an attorney and was denied." Dr. Mitchell's eyes darkened. For the first time, his polite, clinical smile cracked. He didn't press me immediately, just stood up and told me to rest. But before leaving, he murmured, "Being non-compliant will only extend your stay. Here, Lily." The door clicked shut. The electronic lock beeped. I sat in the stark white room, looking at the bed bolted to the floor, at the empty plastic tray where my ring used to be, and up at the blinking red light of the camera. My panic subsided. The fear was still there, the pain was still there, but beneath it all, something else was rising. Not blind rage, but a cold, hard determination to survive long enough to burn this all to the ground. That evening, the TV in the common area played the financial news again. I heard the anchor mention Smart Haven and its upcoming Series A funding round, praising Hunter Davies as a resilient CEO overcoming personal tragedy. Through the door's window, I saw Hunter and Mia on the screen again, standing in front of the blue logo I had spent 3 sleepless nights designing. In the stage lights, they looked like the real married couple. And I, the legal wife, was locked away without a phone, a wallet, a ring, or even my name on my own life's work. On my second night at Serenity Pines, I finally understood why people lose their minds in white rooms. It's not the color of cleanliness, it's the color of a blank slate. Anyone with a pen and power can write whatever they want over your slate. Life. Around 9 p.m., Nurse Harper came in with a small paper cup of pills. She gave me a quick tense look, then wrote in her chart, her voice lower than usual. "Take this, please. It's just a mild sleep aid. Nothing heavy." I stared at the little white pill. If I didn't take it, tomorrow's chart would read, "Refusal of medication." If I did, I was terrified of what Hunter might make me sign while I was groggy, or what they might do while I was unconscious. I picked up the water cup, tossed the pill back, but used my tongue to tuck it deep into my cheek. The water tasted metallic and my heart hammered like I was committing a crime. Nurse Harper looked at me for a few seconds. She might have noticed, but she didn't say a word. She just took the empty cup and said, "If you feel unwell, press the call button, but don't pound on the door tonight. The cameras are recording. They'll use it against you." Once she left, I sat perfectly still for 10 minutes before I dared to spit the dissolving pill into a tissue, wrap it tightly, and bury it at the bottom of the trash can. I didn't know if that tiny act of rebellion mattered, but it made me feel human. Sometimes, keeping your mind sharp is more valuable than gold. Around midnight, my door suddenly opened. An elderly woman with silver hair was guided into the second bed near the window. The nurses called her Mrs. Henderson. She was frail, clutching a worn tote bag that held a few notebooks and a dog-eared copy of Forbes magazine. A nurse explained that the AC in her SE8's room was broken, so she'd be bunking with me for the night. Once the nurses left, the room fell quiet, save for Mrs. Henderson's soft coughing. She didn't look like the blank-eyed patients in the hall. Her eyes were clouded with age but incredibly sharp. A moment later, she turned to me, her voice raspy. "You're Lily, aren't you?" I flinched, sitting up. Hearing my real name, not a patient ID, not a diagnosis, made my throat tight. "Yes, I am." Mrs. Henderson pointed a bony finger at the Forbes magazine in her bag. "I saw you on the news this afternoon. They said you had a breakdown, but your eyes don't look crazy. People who are wronged usually look at the door, not the walls." I don't know why, but that single sentence made my tears finally spill over. Since arriving, everyone had talked down to me with fake clinical sympathy. Nobody had asked me what actually happened. I turned my face away to wipe my slough eyes, not wanting a stranger to see me weak. But Mrs. Henderson just pulled the Proteo magazine out and placed it on my bed. The cover featured a man in a dark, expensive suit standing in front of a sleek, tech campus. The headline highlighted a rising, aggressive venture capital fund. I glanced at it and froze. The name on the cover dropped into my memory like a stone in a quiet pond. Quinn. It had been 10 years since I last saw Quinn. In my memory, Quinn wasn't this formidable man with a luxury watch and a cold stare. Back then, he was just a scrawny, broke computer science student who always wore a faded jacket and cheap, worn-out sneakers. I had met him in the campus dining hall. He was standing in front of the hot food counter, counting pennies in his palm, before quietly turning away. I had just gotten paid from my campus job. I wasn't rich, but seeing him walk away to eat a plain piece of cold bread made my heart sink. When you're young and poor, the worst part isn't the hunger, it's the humiliation of others seeing it. I had walked up to his table, placed my dining card in front of him, and lied. Terribly. I accidentally loaded way too many dining dollars this semester, and I can't finish them. Use this. Just fix my laptop at the end of the month as payback. Quinn had looked at me for a long time, his eyes guarded and embarrassed. He didn't take it right away. Are you pitying me? I shook my head. No, I'm investing. Once you're a genius tech billionaire, I'm going to cash in. That made his lips twitch, wanting to smile but holding back. He finally took the card, carefully tucking it into his textbook. From that day on, I would often find a black coffee with a splash of oat milk on my desk, sometimes a warm bagel or just a sticky note telling me not to study so late. Once, a dining manager noticed my card was buying an absurd amount of meals and accused Quinn of stealing it from a female student. They called me into the blank admin office. A crowd of students had gathered, eager for drama. Before I could even explain, Quinn took all the blame. He said he found the card and used it because he was starving, explicitly stating I had nothing to do with it. I was furious and heartbroken. Later, I asked him why he lied. He just looked at his worn-out shoes and whispered, "If they knew you gave it to me, they'd say, you pitied me or that I was using you. I am broke, but I won't let them drag your name through the mud." Years ago, a boy so poor he had to skip meals protected my dignity at all costs. Now, the husband who stood with me at the altar was trading my dignity for shares and PR. Mrs. Henderson sighed as I told her the story. She tapped the magazine cover. "This man is famous now. The nurses watch the financial channels all the time. He buys out massive companies. Do you really know him?" I looked at the face on the magazine. "He probably doesn't remember me." I smiled bitterly. "He's way up there now, and I'm in here." When you hit rock bottom, the memory of past kindness hurts more than current cruelty. It reminds you that you were once treated like a human being. Mrs. Henderson stayed silent for a long time. Then, she slowly pulled her tote bag closer. Out in the hallway, the rubber soles of a nurse's shoes squeaked past. The camera above whirred slightly. Suddenly, Mrs. Henderson hunched over, coughing violently, acting as if she couldn't breathe. I rushed over to support her, patting her back. Under the cover of the blanket, her wrinkled hand moved incredibly fast, pressing a cold, hard object into my palm. I almost gasped. It was a cheap, old burner phone. She gripped my wrist, still fake coughing, and mouthed soundlessly, "Don't open. It here, bathroom. Someone sent it for you." I was paralyzed. Who? How? But the door beeped. Nurse Harper walked in, her eyes darting between Mrs. Henderson and me. I instantly shoved my hand under the pillow. Harper put a freshwater pitcher on the table and said, casually, "The camera angle in this room is glitching near the bathroom door tonight. Maintenance. Won't fix it till tomorrow. Get some sleep." My heart pounded. I looked at Harper, but she didn't meet my eyes. She just adjusted Mrs. Henderson's blanket and left. I lay back down, gripping the burner phone so tightly the plastic bit into my skin. I waited 20 agonizing minutes until the hallway was completely dead. Then, I walked slowly into the bathroom. The fluorescent light flickered. I locked the door, crouched in the blind spot Harper had hinted at, and powered on the phone. The tiny screen lit up. 1 bar of battery, 1 unread text message from an unknown number. "Don't be afraid. See you tomorrow." I read those 6 words over and over until my vision blurred. No name, no grandiose promises. But in that bathroom smelling of bleach, clutching that cheap phone was like holding a lit match in a freezing storm. I didn't dare sob. Out loud, just let the tears stream over my knuckles. Everyone had told me to calm down, but only this message made me want to fight to see the morning. Suddenly, the phone vibrated. I panicked, pressing it to my chest to muffle the routed sound. No caller ID. I hesitated, then pressed answer. Over the line, I heard wind, the distant hum of a car engine, and then a voice deeper and rougher than in my memory. Lily. Just my name. But I knew it was Quinn. Some people you think you've forgotten, but the moment they speak, the years strip away. I choked on my tears. Quinn. He paused for a beat, then spoke with absolute authority. It's me. Listen. Closely. Between now and tomorrow morning, do not sign anything. Do not take any medication unless someone forces you. And even then, make sure there's a witness. Do not argue with the doctors. Do not hit the door. The calmer you are, the harder it is for them to twist the narrative. I covered my mouth to muffle a sob. He didn't ask if I was okay. He didn't offer pity. He gave me instructions to survive. The guy who once stared at a food counter understood that what I needed wasn't comforting words, but a way out. How did you know I was here? I whispered. I heard paper shuffling. Hunter used Dr. Mitchell to bypass standard 5,150 protocols. I just got my hands on the intake logs and the front gate security. Our footage. My legal team is handling the facility's parent company right now. I'll be there in the morning. My grip tightened. So I was right. It wasn't a crime of passion after a slap. It was a premeditated cage. Does he just want my equity? I asked. Quinn's silence confirmed my worst fears. Don't stay in the bathroom too long, he finally said. Hide the phone. Tomorrow, when you hear the cars, walk out to the lobby. I'll handle the rest. The line went dead. I waited for my heart rate to drop, hid the phone in a plastic bag Mrs. Henderson had taped inside the toilet tank, and went back to bed. Mrs. Henderson was still asleep, but she tapped her finger twice against the mattress. Are you okay? I tapped back. Thank you. While I slept fitfully, Hunter was wide awake. Later, through the documents Quinn provided, I learned Hunter had spent that entire night in his downtown corporate boardroom. On the table were cold coffees, term sheets for the Series A, a drafted restructuring plan, and a petition for conservatorship. His attorney, a shark named Foster, not Quinn's lawyer, tapped the paperwork. Getting her deemed entirely unfit will take time. For now, you lock her out of the servers, freeze her corporate accounts, and use this hold to prove she's an episode. Unreliable narrator. Hunter rubbed his temples. He no longer looked like the grieving husband from the news. Mia sat next to him, tapping her pink manicured nails against a glass. What if she gets out and goes to the press? You have footage of her assaulting you, Mia said, her voice sharp. Keep pushing the crazy jealous wife angle. We have the upper hand. She isn't stupid, Hunter snapped. She has the master files for Smart Haven on free blank, her personal drives. If she talks to the VCs, the funding falls through. Mia stirred her coffee. Then make sure everyone believes she's actually insane. A normal woman doesn't assault her husband in front of 500 investors. A sane woman doesn't claim her husband stole her ideas without proof. When I read that transcript later, my blood ran cold. Mia wasn't just a mistress. She knew exactly what I built, knew the psychiatric hold was a sham, but she was willing to crush me to secure her spot next to a wealthy CEO. Hunter. Signed the paperwork, requesting an extension on my communication blackout. Around 3 a.m., I woke up to whispering outside. Nurse Harper was arguing with a male orderly. Maintenance is coming to check the cameras at 6 a.m. We need the Frostinance Inez Telfer. Ward prepped. Why do they schedule maintenance when we have a high-profile VIP hold? The orderly grumbled. Protocol is protocol, Harper said loudly. I lay still in the dark. Quinn said he was coming. Harper was clearing the Pell and Sticken. Hallway cameras. It was a path being paved for me. By 5 a.m., the frosted window turned gray. Harper came in to check my blood. Pressure. As she wrapped the cuff around my arm, she whispered incredibly fast. If the door unlocks this morning, walk straight down the main hall to the main hall. Lobby. Don't run. If anyone asks, say you are going to meet your attorney. I looked at her, my throat tight. She didn't wait for a thank you. I knew she was risking her job. After she left, I retrieved the phone. The battery was dying. Just as I was about to turn it off, a bizarre sound vibrated through the reinforced walls. It started as a low, thunderous rumble like a distant storm. But it grew louder, thicker, the unmistakable roar of high-performance engines accelerating up the private driveway of Serenity Pines. I ran to the window, scratching a tiny peephole through the frost. Winding up. The hill through the morning fog was a procession of glowing headlights. Not just one car, but a fleet of them, cutting through the gloom like a trail of fire. The ward erupted, patients yelled. Orderlies ran down the hall, walkie-talkies, blaring. My heart hammered against my ribs. I remembered Quinn's words. When you hear the cars, walk out to the lobby. My door was locked. I knocked 3 times, not frantic pounding, but steady, calm. Knocks. I need to go to the lobby. I am meeting my attorney. A moment later, the electronic lock clicked. Harper stood there, pale and sweating, but her eyes were fierce. Go with me. Walk slowly. Cameras are on. Mrs. Henderson sat up. I looked back at her. She gave me a single, firm nod. The hallway smelled like bleach and panic. Nurses were trying to corral confused patients. The engine noise outside was so loud it made the floor tiles vibrate. As we passed the common area, the TV was still blaring CNBC, but nobody was watching. When I reached the lobby, I saw a sight I will never forget. Parked in a blockade across the front entrance of the wellness center was a line of luxury. Sports cars, Porsches, Ferraris, and 2 blacked-out SUVs. The headlights pierced the glass doors. This quiet, sinister place in the suburbs had its silence violently ripped apart. The facility manager rushed out, waving his hands. You don't have an appointment. This is a medical facility. You need to leave. From the lead SUV stepped a man in a dark, bespoke suit. He didn't rush. He didn't shout. It was Quinn. His eyes were the same ones from the dining hall, intense and unyielding, but now they held the power to make corrupt men sweat. Attorney Foster stepped out beside him, opening a briefcase right in the proseless doorway. His voice boomed across the lobby. We represent Mrs. Lily Davies. You are currently holding a competent adult against her will, restricting her communication, and confiscating her property without a valid court order or legitimate 5,150 documentation. Open the doors and release our client. Immediately. The manager stammered. A security guard reached for his radio. Quinn looked up. At the facility's security cameras. His voice was low but lethal. I have the security footage of her illegal intake, as well as the financial transfers made to your lead psychiatrist yesterday. Do we handle this here, or do I hand it over to the FBI and the state medical board? When you expose the men holding the keys, the cage doors open very quickly. The automatic doors slid apart. Dr. Mitchell emerged from a side hallway, his lab coat wrinkled, trying to maintain his authority. The patient is underleadern/in. A 72-hour observation. Agitating her environment is highly unethical. Attorney Foster slammed a document onto the reception desk. If you are her, doctor, produce the legal justification for this hold. If this is merely voluntary observation, as your own files claim, she is leaving right now. Dr. Mitchell fell silent. The silence proved he had nothing. I stood a few feet away, wearing baggy blue scrubs, my hair messy, my wrist bruised. I had thought I would be humiliated if Quinn saw me like this. But when he walked up to me, there was no pity in his eyes. He looked at me closely, ensuring I was standing on my own 2 feet, and asked, "Do you want to leave?" The simplicity of the question broke me. For 2 days, Hunter and these doctors had dictated my reality, my sanity, my rights. Quinn was the only one who asked what I wanted. I nodded, my voice gone. Quinn signaled his team. Foster demanded the return of my personal effects and a signed discharge paper noting my physical condition and the time of release. Doctor, Mitchell tried to interject, but I looked him dead in the eye and spoke loudly. Enough for the lobby cameras to record. I want it noted on my record that I never consented to this intake. I was denied legal counsel. I reject all of your medical conclusions. A nurse brought out a plastic evidence bag containing my ID, my hairpins, and my wedding ring. I took the bag but didn't put the ring back on. Nurse Harper slipped me a small folded piece of paper with her shift schedule and personal number. I will testify, it read. Before walking out, I ripped the plastic patient band off my wrist. It snapped, leaving a red welt, and I dropped it on the reception desk. I didn't scream or cry. I just dropped it. The click it made against the laminate was the sound of the first chain breaking. Quinn took off his suit jacket and draped it over my shoulders. It smelled like clean wool and crisp morning air. He opened the car door for me. Before I got in, he handed me a thick manila envelope. This is just phase 1. Security, footage, financial wire transfers to Mitchell, and Hunter's visitor logs. It's enough to prove you aren't crazy. I clutched the envelope. I was holding the truth in my hands. As the SUV rolled down the hill, I looked back at the white building. 2 days isn't a long time, but it's long enough to learn that if you don't fight for your own narrative, someone else will write your madness into existence. Around noon that day, a black Bentley slammed on its brakes in front of Serenity Pines. Hunter jumped out, holding a bouquet of white lilies and a bag from my socket. Favorite bakery. He played the part of the regretful husband perfectly. He marched to the front desk. I'm here to pick up my wife, Lily Davies. How is she? The receptionist looked at him, then at the lilies. She swallowed hard, glancing at the broken patient wristband still sitting on the desk. You're too late, Mr. Davies, she stammered. A fleet of supercars came and took her away this morning. At that exact moment, I was sitting in a private clinic in the city. A doctor who was documenting my bruises, taking a toxicology report which showed traces of a mild, unprescribed sedative, and taking photos of my raw wrists. We need this on record, the doctor said gently. Not to make you relive it, but so when the time comes, your pain has legal weight. Afterward, Quinn took me to a secure conference room in his firm's high-rise. Laptops, printers, and a pot of hot ginger tea were waiting. Attorney Foster and a paralegal were sorting color-coded files. When I walked in, nobody stared at my scrubs or the bruises. Quinn pulled out a chair for me and pushed a tablet across the table. It was playing security footage from Serenity Pines. The timestamp was 4:30 p.m., afternoon before our anniversary gala. Hunter, wearing a navy polo, walked into Dr. Mitchell's office holding a black folder. I stared at the screen, my hands turning ice cold. It was the day before I slapped him. Before the cameras. Before the meltdown. This meant the trap wasn't a panicked reaction to public humiliation. He had pre-booked my psychiatric hold. Has he stolen my assets yet? I asked. Foster looked at Quinn, then answered carefully. Not completely, but he locked. Are you out of your corporate email, changed the server admin rights, and drafted a power of attorney citing your mental incapacity. Legally, those documents need your signature or a court order. But if he had kept you in there longer while the media dragged your name, it would have been catastrophic. I understood now why Quinn had brought the supercars, the lawyers, the noise. He hadn't just rescued me. He had pulled me back from the cliff's edge before I fell into a legal black hole. The paralegal asked if I wanted to put my wedding ring in a safe. I looked at it, in the plastic bag, and shook my head. Put it with the evidence. Quinn slid a mug of tea toward me. Do you want to rest? Or do you want to see? The rest? I looked at him. 2 days ago, I would have asked him to decide for me. But after having my free will stripped away, I never wanted to hand the reins to anyone else again. Show me. I need to know everything Hunter did. They played a recovered audio file from Hunter's corporate boardroom. It was Hunter, Mia, and his lawyer. Mia's voice. Keep pushing the crazy, jealous wife angle. Hunter's voice. Keep her in there a few more days. Once the media accepts she's unstable, getting the signatures will be easy. Hearing the man I spent 5 years with plotting to erase me, it didn't break. My heart, it killed whatever was left of it. I asked for a legal pad and wrote down my witness list. Nurse Harper, Mrs. Henderson, old engineers who built the Smart Haven prototype with me, and VC, analysts I had pitched to personally. Quinn watched me write until my bruised wrist cramped. Lily, he said, my legal team can destroy him in court, but the PR war, stepping back out there, means you will hear awful things. You don't have to face the media if you don't want to. I smiled bitterly. I've already been called a psycho wife. They said I lost my mind with jealousy. They took my company and put it in Mia's hands. If I stay quiet, their lies become history. I looked at my wrist. I don't need you to fight my battles, Quinn. I just need you to hold the evidence. I will speak for myself. The next morning, I traded the blue scrubs for a sharp, tailored navy suit Quinn's assistant had bought. It wasn't flashy, but it acted as armor. I looked in the mirror. My eyes were hollow, but I was no longer a victim. Are you sure about today? Quinn asked from the doorway. Today is the Smart Haven Seed Funding Summit, I replied. If I don't show up, Hunter will use my platform to erase me. The summit was held at a massive convention center in South Lake Union. Inside, Hunter was holding court with top-tier venture capitalists. He looked confident, charismatic. Mia stood by his side, playing the brilliant co-founder. When I walked through the double doors, flanked by Quinn and Attorney Foster, the chatter in the room died. People recognized Quinn first, the heavyweight, billionaire investor. Then, they recognized me. Whispers erupted. Eyes darted to my bruised wrist, my pale face, my straight posture. Hunter saw me. His charming smile froze for a fraction of a second before he snapped back into crisis management mode. He hurried off the stage and approached me, his voice oozing fake concern. Lily, honey, let's step outside. This environment isn't good for your health. He leaned in, dropping his voice to a vicious whisper. Don't forget, I still have your psychiatric file. If you make a scene, I'll leak it. You're already a liability. Don't ruin yourself. I looked at him. The man who knew I loved chicken noodle soup when I was sick was now using my vulnerabilities to blackmail me. My ruins are no longer yours to manage, I said softly. Hunter tried to grab my arm, but Quinn stepped seamlessly between us. He didn't say a word, just stared Hunter down until the CEO backed off. I walked to the VIP front row and sat down. When the Q&A session began, a tech blogger stood up and asked Hunter about the unfortunate gala incident and his soon-to-be ex-wife's condition. Hunter sighed, gripping the mic. I prefer to keep personal matters private. Lily is someone I care deeply for, and I ask the media not to judge her during her mental health struggles. A senior VC from a major firm turned to Quinn. Quinn, are you here representing your fund? And who is your guest? She looks familiar. Quinn took a microphone but handed it straight to me. The room went dead silent. Cameras pivoted. I held the mic with my right hand. My left, with the visible bruising, rested on the table. My name is Lily Davies, I said, my voice projecting across the cavernous room. I am Hunter's legal wife, and the original architect and co-founder of the Staplex Smart Haven project. 2 days ago, after catching my husband having an affair with his PR assistant, I slapped him. I do not deny losing my temper. But I categorically deny his attempt to use that slap to medically kidnap me, seize my assets, and declare me mentally incompetent. The room gasped. Hunter turned white. Mia gripped the edge of the stage. Hunter lunged for a mic. Lily, you're having an episode. Someone cut her mic. I begged to speak to an attorney. I was denied. I continued smoothly, ignoring him. Attorney Foster stood up and began handing out manila folders to the lead investors. I am not asking for pity. I am asking you to look at the evidence. I pulled out my phone and held it to the mic. I played the audio clip. Hunter's voice echoed through the convention center. Keep her in there a few more days. Once the media accepts she's unstable, getting the signatures will be easy. Pandemonium. Investors dropped their iPads. Reporters shouted questions. Security ran down the aisles. Hunter was stammering, screaming that the audio was deep-faked, that I was insane. But the trap he dug for me had just become his grave. I stood up, looked at the cameras, and delivered the final blow. You called me. Crazy, Hunter. Explain the audio to the SEC. That audio clip acted like a match in a gas-filled room. Within hours, the internet exploded. The narrative flipped from crazy wife to corporate. Psychopath medically kidnaps co-founder. The next day, Quinn arranged a highly controlled interview with a reputable, investigative journalist. Before the cameras rolled, the makeup artist offered to cover my bruised wrist with concealer. I shook my head. I wasn't going to weaponize my trauma, but I wasn't going to hide it either. The bruise didn't mean I was weak, it meant I survived. When asked if the slap provoked the psychiatric hold, I looked dead into the wan lens. A slap is a loss of composure. Pre-booking a psychiatric bed 24 hours before the slap even occurred is a calculated conspiracy. When a man cheats, he doesn't just apologize. Sometimes, he tries to convince the world you're crazy, so no one believes you when you demand what's yours. Hunter's company imploded. VCs pulled their term sheets. The board of directors demanded an emergency meeting. Dr. Mitchell was suspended by the state medical board pending a federal investigation. Nurse Harper and Mrs. Henderson provided sworn affidavits about my illegal detention. Mia tried to distance herself. She was spotted at a high-end boutique in Bordecombe, Bellevue, trying to buy her way out of her stress, but when she swiped her card, it was declined. Hunter had frozen the accounts. When she called him, screaming, a leaked source said he told her, "You're on your own. Don't drag me down with you." She was subpoenaed 2 days later. Her texts proving she conspired to forge my signature on the equity transfers were handed to the DA. Hunter begged for a settlement meeting. We met in the old conference room where we had built the company. He looked destroyed, hollowed out, his suit hanging loosely off his frame. "Lily, please," he croaked, staring at the divorce papers and asset forfeiture documents my lawyer placed in front of him. I was just stressed. I panicked. "Don't destroy the company. It's your legacy too." I sat across from him, feeling nothing. No anger, no love, no pity. My legacy is my name, Hunter. You tried to erase it. Now you're paying the price. I stood up. "Sign the papers, or we go to trial and you go to federal prison for wire, fraud, and false imprisonment." 3 months later, the court finalized my divorce. The judge invalidated the forged power of attorney, returned my 50% equity, and awarded me total control over the Smart Haven IP. Hunter was ousted as CEO, currently facing criminal charges alongside Dr. Mitchell. Leaving the courthouse, the Seattle sun broke through the clouds. A clerk handed to me an evidence bag. Inside was my cheap silver wedding ring. I looked at it, remembering the cramped apartment and the promises of a broke startup founder. You can't just erase the good memories and pretend the bad ones are all there. Ever was. But you can choose to leave them both in the past. I dropped the ring into a nearby trash can. Months later, I moved my new development team into a beautiful brick and beam office in Pioneer Square. On my desk, there were no expensive flowers, just a small framed quote. "Everyone has the right to hurt, but no one has the right to turn your pain into a prison." Quinn integrated into my life slowly. He didn't overwhelm me with grand romantic gestures or try to buy my affection. He simply drove me to my therapy appointments, sent a black coffee with oat milk to my office, and sat quietly with me when the PTSD from the White Room flared up. "You don't have to treat me like glass," I told him one day. "I'm not going to break." Quinn looked at me, his eyes soft. "I know you aren't going to break, Lily, but even unbreakable things deserve to be handled with care." One rainy afternoon, he took me to a small diner near our old college campus. It had been renovated, but it still smelled like cheap coffee and frying bacon. He ordered us basic burgers and sliding a black coffee across the table to me. "You still remember my coffee order," I smiled. "You saved me from starving," he chuckled. I had to remember. After we ate, he reached into his jacket and pulled out a small plastic case. Inside was my old university dining swipe card. The laminate was peeling and my teenage face was faded, but the ID number was still legible. My breath caught. "You kept it?" He placed it on the table. "When I was at my absolute lowest, I swore that if I ever made it, I would pay you back. Not the money. I wanted to pay back the sanes. Dignity you gave me when I had nothing." The afternoon light filtered through the diner windows, casting a warm, golden hue over the table. I picked up the card, tears pricking my eyes, but my chest felt incredibly light. Not all artifacts from the past drag you down. Some remind you that despite the cruelty of the world, there are still fundamentally good people in it. I tried to hand it back to him, keep it, as a souvenir. Quinn didn't take it. He gently pushed my hand back, his gaze steady and incredibly patient. "You gave me a meal back then, Lily. Will you give me a chance to stay by your side now?" I didn't answer immediately. I looked at the battered card, at the hot coffee, and then at the man who had walked through hell to stand by me when I needed it most. Love after trauma shouldn't be rushed. It requires careful, deliberate steps. But looking at Quinn, I knew he wasn't trying to pull me. He was just offering his hand, waiting for me to be ready to walk. I smiled, slipped the dining card into my purse, and nodded. Outside, the Seattle rain finally stopped, leaving the streets washed clean. The truth might be delayed, and justice might be a grueling fight. But as long as you have the courage to survive the darkest room, the morning light will eventually break through.